Welcome back to another brainstorm now for this third iteration. In the third iteration, we're going to experiment with altering the groom such that everything that was already grown from the first iteration can be artistically controlled for the end of that groom such that we hand draw out new curves and then append them at the end of the curves that were from the first and second iteration to create the shape of this bun looping into a hair elastic. This will be very useful because it gives us artistic control, similarly to what we had in the first iteration, the second iteration, and where we control the bangs. But now we'll be able to take curves that flow perfectly instead of having to hand draw these, and then just change what we want to see at the very end. So to see how this can be done, let's dive into this third iteration brainstorm. To start, I have a Bezier curve, which I will convert to a polyline as before, which we learned in the last brainstorm, that we need before we can actually use this as a hair gen guide. And I want to take this and I want to mirror it so that I have one line, which I have as a magenta, and another line, which I have as a green, the original. And if I merge them together, I can see that, yes, we have both the curves on screen. So because we have two different curves, we actually have two different primitives. I have 44 points, which is 22 points per curve. And using this merge, I can get everything into the same geometry stream. However, this can come apart because if I turn on my points, I can see that, yes, it appears that there is only 1 point here, but using the number, well, no, there is 2 points that are overlapping, and so we can't quite clearly read that out because counting back, this is 3, 2, 1, 0, and this is 24, 23, 22. So 0 and 22 are overlapping. Now using the fuse with a snap distance set to 1 centimeter, I'm going to take a look at that. And there we go. I had that 1 point here and that other point, as well as the 2 points that were overlapping, all come together. So 4 points became 1, which is why we went from 44 points down to 41. Taking a look back from further away, my color attributes, which was by point class, is now kind of making a bit of a gradient between these two lines. We no longer have that crisp look, and that's because that 1 point is now sharing the color information from either side. As we can see here, we have a bit of a gradient happening now, right where they fuse together. Now this is fused, and so we have lost a couple points, and we have this one connective line, but it's still two primitives. This matters because a primitive that has information like skin prim UV and skin prim that comes from the attribute guide skin attribute lookup, if there's two primitives, the second primitive that has actually been connected using that fuse does not carry that information along with it, which means that we can artistically generate whatever we want. But if the groom here has all that attributes needed for making guides, and this does not, then a hair generation node will actually drop this information, and this geometry will disappear. So let's see what I mean by that. I have this switch node. It switches back between this purpose of this join and then bypassing it. So I want to take a look at this primitive, and I'm going to add a curve view attribute, and then with a color, I'm going to take this nice spectrum and then ramp along the curve view. Well, that's strange. We have a single line, but we have a repeating spectrum. Why? That's because we have two primitives. Now, if I add in this join, so I'm going to join and just set to the default settings really, and change the input for the switch. Now I have one line and one spectrum and one primitive. So the join used after the fuse, used after the merge, is the secret to being able to get artistically controlled curves appended on to already pre-made guides. Now let's try this out with an actual hair generation node. I'm going to take this grid and I'm going to generate hair. So let's look at it without this guide input from the upstream. And I have some nice fat curves which have been done using a thickness of 1 centimeter. So these are very large, but the grid is also in the scale of a meter or two. So that's why I need these grids, these guides to be extra thick. If I bring in this input, I'm going to turn that switch node so that I do not use the join. I have that original Bezier curve, and what does that look like if it's converted and then used as a guide with influence radius on the hair gen, there are those curves. Now, why do I only see some? What happened to all that grass looking groom I had before? It's because I turned off this grow unguided hair, just so I could see what's happening at the roots a little easier. But those curves is that single Bezier. We still have the other geometry merged in and fused, but it is not visible because the two primitives have to be joined as one. And let's see what happens if I take this switch and turn to the other input where the join is being used. There we have it. Now I can see when I turn off this grow unguided hair, I now have hairs following that width, which is in the attribute in appearance, that hair profile in which we start thick and work to thin. It's following that shape and length of the new inputs which are controlling these guides. I hope that this was helpful in understanding the process needed to create artistically generated, artistically controlled curves and how to bring them into a groom that has already been developed upstream. And we're going to see how we can use this to create this look here in which we hand draw out a bun and merge, fuse, and join it to the pre-existing guides from the groom. I hope this was useful and that you learned something, and thank you for watching.